We'll do it live. We'll do it live. The topic this evening is the Illuminati and the Manson murders. If my computer works. Assuming my computer is going to work, that's going to be the topic. So, did you know that Charles Manson lived at the Lone Ranger Studios? Did you know that? Did you know that he lived on the Lone Ranger Studios where they filmed the Lone Ranger? I just found that out. And so the reason I find this interesting is because when you hear about Charles Manson, the media and the district attorney's office that prosecuted him gave us a motive. They gave us a motive of why did they do this? Why did they carry out these horrific crimes, right? And the reason they gave us was because they were brainwashed and that they were in a cult and that they were on a lot of drugs. Now, the fact of the matter is they were on a lot of drugs. And other than that, their motive doesn't necessarily add up. The motive that we were given by the police and the investigators really doesn't make that much sense. When the average person might ask some real questions, which were never asked. And when you see all these interviews that they do with Charles Manson, they always ask him stupid questions. Then he acts crazy, and that's the interview. So they ask him questions about how does he feel about the crime, and and he starts saying crazy things, and then that's the interview. And it's always the same interview, right? Now, let me give you an example. If you let's say there's some crackheads that live in your neighborhood, right? And let's say there's somebody you don't like, or there's somebody doing something you don't like. You could hire some crackhead to go commit a crime. And if the police caught the crackhead, and they ask him why'd you do this? They're not going to get anything out of him because he's crazy, right? Because he's going to start rambling and talk about this and that and this other thing, and none of it's going to make any sense. And they could have the guy red-handed. They'll never know that you were involved, right? They'll never know you were involved. But I actually think that Charles Manson is smarter than the average crackhead. And I think he just never talked about any of that stuff. And I think he just played right along because he was a professional criminal in many ways. He wasn't, in many ways, Charles Manson was a professional criminal. He'd been a criminal his whole life. He knew how to be a criminal. He knew the moral code of the criminal was not to rat out the people that you're involved with in crime. And if you ever listen to any of his interviews, he never rats anybody out. He never talks about who told him what to do or who he was in business with, or he never talked about any of that. Now, the other people that aren't ratting anybody out are the prosecutors in the district attorney's office in Los Angeles. They're not ratting anybody out either. And this is where we get into the Illuminati. And this is where we get into how our governments actually run. And this is where we get into who runs Hollywood and who runs Los Angeles and who runs the police departments and the investigative departments of Los Angeles. And the thing that you have to understand is whether it's the Manson killings or the Wonderland murders, which were similar in a lot of ways, is in both cases, well, in the Manson case, there was no investigation beyond Charles Manson and the people that actually did the attack. In the Wonderland murders, which is different, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they were similar in that it was drug related. And that's why I'm starting to believe that there's more of a motive to the Charles Manson murders than just they were a bunch of druggies that were out doing satanic rituals. I think there was more to that. I think there's more to it than that. And the theory is that it was about drugs, and it was about drug dealing, and it was about drug dealing, and it was about the thing you have to understand. The thing you have to understand about the mafia or the Illuminati, which is the mafia. The Illuminati is the mafia. The Illuminati is the mafia that runs Hollywood, and they're connected to the Anti-Defamation League, and they're connected to the CIA, and they're connected to drug dealing, big time drug dealing, because was going through there, lots of drugs going through there, and that's why I brought up the Wonderland murders, because Hollywood would buy drugs from certain people, and in the case of the Wonderland murders, they bought it from that guy. Who I'm not going to talk about that story tonight. We're talking about Charles Manson. And Charles Manson is responsible for killing the LaBiancas and the Tates. And Folger, one of the ladies' names was the Folger, like Folger's coffee. So there was a but here's the interesting thing about it. I'm watching this documentary about Charles Manson, and it's produced by the people that are involved in the investigation, involved in the prosecution, and it's very, very misleading, right? It's very misleading, and that's why I'm saying that the people who arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned Charles Manson and his accomplices were part of a cover-up. Now, the first thing, now I like to watch Columbo, love Columbo. So Columbo was definitely not on this investigation. He was not invited to this homicide. Because the first question you ask is, who was killed at the site? At the let's take the site where the Tate, what was her name? Tate, Sharon Tate, beautiful lady, right? Sharon Tate. Well, who else was there? Who else was there that night? It was Sharon Tate and her boyfriend, Jay Sebring, I believe his name is. Okay, she's married to Roman Polanski. Where was Roman Polanski? He was out of town. He was in Europe. So he wasn't there. Okay. So just that alone, if I was an investigator, that would go, your husband wasn't here, but you were here with your boyfriend, and someone came in and killed both of you. That's a little suspicious that Roman Polanski just happened to be out of town when the killings took place. Now, what's the connection there? I don't know. I just think that's suspicious that she was having relations with another man, and she was pregnant, and her husband just happened to not be there the night she gets killed with her boyfriend and two other people that are there visiting. The Folgers gal, I don't know her exact name. I don't want to dig through my computer while I'm talking to you because it'll be too distracting. But the gal from the Folgers she was the heiress of Folgers Coffee Company, and her boyfriend or husband or whoever she was with, right? So it was like they're having a little party, and they all get killed. Now, because you think, so in the documentary I'm watching, right, it starts out where they're talking about Charles Manson, and he's living on this ranch. And then they say, well, and the ranch isn't far from, Hollywood. It's not that far. And I'm like, oh, it's not far from Hollywood. Interesting. Because I always heard, I knew he lived on a ranch, right? Oh, he lives on a ranch, and it's out in the desert. I assumed it was out in the desert. I thought maybe it was out in, like Needles, California, like it's way out there. No, it's just real close to town, right? If you're in Hollywood and you go up the road, up into the hills up there a little ways, past, you go up into what's called the valley, and there's some hills back there up in the valley, what they call the valley. It's just north of, on the other side of it, like in Hollywood, there's some hills behind Hollywood. You go up those hills, and now you're in this other part called the Valley, and that's Burbank and Chatsworth and Glendale, Los Feliz. It's like all behind. It's like there's like a mountain range that separates Hollywood from the Valley, right? And that's the Valley back there. So he's on the west end, up in the hills back there. Now, what's back there? What's back there is a movie set. It's a literal movie set. He lives on a movie set. Okay, Charles Manson is living on a movie set, and it's the movie set that the Lone Ranger was filmed on. Okay. And so the guy that, there's a guy, George Spahn, is that his name? Spahn, it's the Spahn Ranch. I believe his name's Mr. Spahn. George Spahn, is that his name? He allows them to live there on his property. So he was the guy, I believe, and I don't know if I have my dates right, but I believe that he bought the ranch at some point, and he rented it out or leased it out to the movie studios so that they could film movies there. And they filmed The Lone Ranger there, and they filmed other movies there. So here you have a connection of literally the land they're living on, which is a movie studio where movies are filmed or were filmed, because they weren't using it as that anymore. And that's where this group is living out there, and they're basically living like on a commune, and they're involved in LSD. Mainly, it's like LSD, marijuana, and other drugs. You know, they're doing probably doing cocaine and what they call speed and different whatever. You know, they're druggies. Now, this is the Illuminati, right? You have drugs, you have the whole hippie movement, and it's run by people with lots of money and connections to the movie business. And the movie business has connections to the drug business and to the CIA, which runs the drug business internationally. Okay, the CIA is behind LSD. The CIA is involved with the mafia and trafficking the heroin. Like, this is how it's been the whole time. That's why in World War II, it was this. And if you don't believe me, you're like, oh, this is disinformation. No, in World War II, the Sicilian mafia helped the Allies fight Mussolini and defeat Mussolini because they were opposed to Mussolini, because Mussolini's fascist government was against the mafia, against organized crime, you see? And the Illuminati is organized crime. That's what it is. It's organized crime. And they sell drugs. They traffic drugs. They traffic drugs from, with the Sicilian mafia, it came out of Turkey, and it went through Turkey. It went into France with the Corsican arm of the international. See, the mafia groups, they have different groups they work with. So the Corsican mafia in France was working with the Sicilian mafia, which was working with the Turks, right, to move the heroin. And then it would come into the United States, and it would go to different locations. Some of them were in the Midwest, and then the heroin gets trafficked into New York, and from New York it gets spread around, and it also moves into just different parts of the country. Now in Hollywood and San Francisco, it was like LSD was the big thing, right? Well, it's not a secret that the U.S. government in the 1950s was testing LSD, and the British government were testing LSD as a weapon to use against troops in war, because it would neutralize troops on the battlefield and make them inoperable and unable to function, right? So they were looking for different kinds of poisons and agents that they could use in war that would neutralize the enemy, so that the enemy wouldn't be able to organize and fight back, and then they could take them over. So they started using LSD. They started spreading LSD in the United States. The CIA did. And they started targeting certain areas and doing experiments through the universities and psychological institutes and hitting places like San Francisco and New York and Los Angeles and Hollywood. And then they would use the musicians in Britain and in New York and in Los Angeles and San Francisco to promote the drug use so that the populations would take it, so that the populations would just start taking it. So it literally was like, when you look at the movie industry and the music industry, both the movies and the music promoted the drugs so that the population would it was like a big commercial. And Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and the Beatles and all these different musicians were there to basically be advertisements for LSD and other drugs so that the population would take the drugs. And so this was a organized, internationally organized operation, which started right after World War II. So as soon as the Allies defeated Hitler and Mussolini, the drugs started to pour in, and they started targeting the populations of America and Europe with drugs. And this is the mafia. This is the mafia. We call it the Illuminati. I do, because that's its origins. Its origins are secret societies who were organizing around sabotaging the existing system and bringing in a new order. And this order is satanic. It's about drug use. It's about sexual, you could call it sexual liberation or sexual perversion or promiscuity, lust, just fulfilling all kinds of sexual whatever. I don't even want to get into that on this video, but you know what I'm talking about. And then, so it's drugs, sex, and it's and money, lots of money. So the movie studios were promoting certain types of behaviors, which they still do, because it's the same organizational structure continuing to promote the certain types of stuff. So let's get back to Spawn Ranch, though. I never thought about this. I never really looked into it. It's just that it came up because I look into some mafia stuff and then it comes up. So I looked at the Charles Manson stuff, and I've thought about it before. I just thought it was suspicious that Roman Polanski just happened to not be there when his wife was killed, and she just happened to be with another guy. I mean, that's, if I was Columbo and I was called to the scene, I would ask, okay, so she was having an affair. Maybe that was the motive of the hit, right? Now the media, whoever these people are, the producers, the book writers, the movie makers that made all these movies and books and documentaries, and they're generating all this money off of Charles Manson's name. They have a certain narrative, right? And the narrative is they were just a bunch of hippies living on a commune, and they were doing a lot of drugs, and they were into all this weird stuff, and they started just killing people because they were weird. Or they were paid to kill people. They were paid to kill people because how were they buying their drugs? How were they buying their food? How were they living in Los Angeles? I mean, it costs money to live, right? Where are you getting the money? Well, most likely they were selling drugs. I don't know. See, these are questions that a real investigator would ask. They would have asked, see, no one's done an interview with Charles Manson and said, where'd you get your money to live out there? And where was everyone like, he's out there with all these good-looking girls, most of them. Some of them were weird-looking. One of them, but I've looked at most of them were very pretty girls, right? So they're pretty girls, very sexy-looking girls, and then they've got. So the girls are like, see, if you think about it, the girls keeping those girls out there, that attracts guys to come out there, right? It's kind of like having the women and having the drugs, and now you can attract certain people. And so who were they attracting to this place, right? At the former movie set, well, they were attracting all kinds of musicians and people in Hollywood, and I think all these really people that were really involved in the movie business. They were all going out there. What were they going out there for? To get high, to have sex, right? Like that's why they were going there. So there was like a thing going on there, run by. I wouldn't say Charles Manson was very smart. He was a criminal. I would say he was working for somebody. I would say that the George Spahn guy who let them live on his ranch was probably also benefiting somehow too. And maybe they were benefiting through drug sales. That's a possibility. Now, in the documentary, one of the people that is connected to the murders in some way is one of the Beach Boys, who, let's see if I can catch his name here.
Charlie's mind and the kind of...
Who's this guy?
Dennis had picked up Patricia Krenwinkel and another member.
Dennis. What was this guy's name? He's one of the Beach Boys, right? Now, in the documentary that I'm watching on YouTube, it's just like, oh, this Dennis guy, he tried to get Charlie Manson a job or like a music contract or something. Okay. I mean, but here's why I'm not. Here's why my Columbo mind starts working. So this Dennis guy who's with the Beach Boys, right? He's hanging out there doing drugs, hanging out with the girls, having sex with the girls and doing drugs. And he's got money. That's what I'm telling you. There's all these people coming out to this spot, right, where Charlie Manson is, and they've got money. I think Steve McQueen was one of them. Hold on a second. Was Steve McQueen one of them? I believe he was. Okay, we'll have to find that out later. So here's the thing. So this Dennis guy from the Beach Boys, he's out there doing drugs and having fun and having sex with all these pretty girls that are out there. And so it's like a place to go. It's a place for all these wealthy musicians and people in Hollywood to go and party, right? It's just a place to go get high and have sex. So that's what it was. And it was set up for them that way. Now here's what, so somehow there's money financing this, because it's not like there's just a bunch of weird, stupid losers out there. It's rich people, right? It's rich people that want to go out there and do drugs and have sex. Now, okay, so this Dennis guy, he knows this other guy named Terry Melcher. And Terry Melcher is the son of Doris Day. I mean, this is who we're talking about. We're talking about the most famous, the richest people in Hollywood, okay? That's who's going out there. So the guy, this Dennis guy from the Beach Boys, he's connected to this Terry Melcher guy. And here's the thing. In the documentary that I'm watching, it covers all this up by saying, well, Terry Melcher came out to listen to, because Charlie Manson, he played the guitar, right? And he liked to sing. And so then the girls sang. So this Terry Melcher guy just went out there to talk to Charlie Manson and see about giving him a record deal, right? That's why he went out there. I don't know. Maybe that's why he went out there. But I think it's suspicious, because they explained this in the video, that Terry Melcher actually shows Charlie Manson where the Tate house is. You see, now I'm suspicious, right? Why would this Terry Melcher guy show Charles Manson where Sharon Tate lives? Why would he do that? He wasn't living there. Now, in the video, the documentary, it claimed that he was staying there or something at one time. Okay, maybe he was just, but he didn't. I haven't gone back and looked at who owned the properties, but he didn't own it. No, he didn't own it. Was he spending the night there? Was he just visiting? Did he know the Tates and that's why he was there? I believe that that's the thing, is that he knew them, and so he had Charlie Manson drop him off there, which means he showed Charles Manson, this Terry Melcher guy, who was a big record producer. We're talking multi-millionaire, okay? Shows Charlie Manson where the Tate house is, who where it is. So then later on in the documentary, Charles Manson goes to that house. He happens to go there. Now in the documentary, it claims that he was going there looking for Terry Melcher because he was supposed to have a deal with him about the record contract. He never got back. I'm not buying that. I mean, I guess I could be wrong. Maybe that's why it happened. But it looks more to me like he went there to look at the house and to see the layout of the house and to see what it's like there. And he just walked right in. He just walked right in around the back, and there's the pool, and there was Sharon Tate, and there was some other guy there. And the guy tells him, "Hey, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here." He says, "Oh, I'm looking for Dennis or somebody or whatever," right? So that's the weird thing about this whole story, is that the Terry Melcher guy in the documentary shows Charles Manson where the house is. Like, here's the house. And then Charlie Manson goes there later and walks around in the house when he's not invited. And just to see, that's the thing. If you're going to do a hit, okay? If you're going to do a hit, you want to know where the house is. You want to know what it's like there. You want to walk around and see what's going on in there. Like, he was planning a hit. Because you could say, well, why would he hit Sharon Tate and the Folger lady? They had nothing to do with anything. Like, if he was mad at this Terry Melcher guy because he was supposed to give him a contract for a record album and he didn't give him, that's their excuse in the documentary. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why would he hit Sharon Tate? She has nothing to do with it. They're like, oh, he was doing this just because. Now they have another excuse. Oh, well, he was doing this because because he was insane, right? And then she just he was just hitting rich people because they represented the establishment that was against him. I'm not buying any of that. I'm not buying any of that. He was friends with all these people, right? And he appears to have been, the other thing that they show in this movie documentary that I'm watching is he was connected to a biker gang. I'm not going to go through and try and find the name of the gang. I'll probably go check it out later. But so what do motorcycle gangs tend to do? They tend to be involved in drugs and drug trafficking, buying drugs, selling drugs, doing crimes, right? So the fact is, he was involved. He was a professional criminal. Charles Manson was a professional criminal living on property that was a movie studio, connected to all these super rich and successful people in Hollywood. And he was providing them with a place to go, to have sex and drugs and have a good time. Okay. And so in the documentary, there's 3 people that basically get hit, right? One is a guy that was a drug dealer that Charles Manson cuts the guy's ear off. And then the other guy that he has working with him, called Tex Watson, stabs the guy and kills him, right? So that's the first hit. And then the second hit is the Tate house, which is Sharon Tate and her boyfriend, and the Folger lady and her boyfriend or husband or whatever they are. So that's hit number 2. And then hit number 3 was the LaBianca hit, which was the next night after the Tates got hit. The LaBiancas got hit. Now, if you go to LaBianca murder, it doesn't explain anything. It just says, he was the man, his name was Lino LaBianca. It says he ran a grocery chain and he was involved in supermarkets. Well, that tells you right there, he's got a lot of money, right? He's running supermarkets. He had a wholesale business. He was running supermarkets. But then what the other thing is, it doesn't, but so the other part of it is he's Italian. So he's an Italian guy, an Italian businessman with lots of money. And the Italians, some of them are involved in organized crime. And some of them are involved in the drug business because that's where all the money's at. Okay? That's where all the money's at. It's in the drug business. And the drug business is connected to the movie business and the music business. So we got the drug business, and we've got the movie business, and we've got the music business. And really, the music business and the movie business are fronts for the drug business. And they were then and they are today. That's why all of your media channels are owned by major drug companies that sell opiates and other drugs, all kinds of drugs. Just the big pharmaceutical companies own your media channels. They own all the major cable news. So all your news, all the news that you get, all the political news that you get comes to you from a pharmaceutical company, a drug business. So the drug business tells you your political news and who the candidates are. But getting back to Charlie Manson, why? Okay, when you look at the LaBiancas, I'm not the first person to have these questions, because Charlie Manson is involved in drugs. He's involved in all these rich people's lives. He's involved in likely distributing drugs, or he's definitely involved in taking them and distributing them. And there's drug trafficking going on. And there's a lot of rich people involved. Rich people in the music industry are involved. So here's a point of drug distribution on a property that's owned by the movie business insiders, right? Where the Lone Ranger was produced. So we look at the LaBiancas. Were they involved in drugs? Well, it looks like they were. It says here, no, this one says it's not. Some people say it is. Some people say they weren't. When you do a Google, search, so I'm not sure. I'm just looking into this. But so here, because I put in Lino LaBianca mafia connections. So the first entry I get says, no, Lino LaBianca is a supermarket executive, had no mafia connections. However, he was murdered by the members of the Manson family, along with his wife, Rosemary, in 1969. Okay, well, just for no reason? He was just murdered for no reason? Oh, because they're Satanists and they're crazy. Now they say, oh, when they went into they did these murders, they would take the blood and they would write things on the walls like "die pigs," or they would put like a black power sign. Well, yeah. Why would you do that? Well, you would do that so people would think the blacks did it, obviously. I mean, look, these were ridiculously bad hits as far as like a professional hit. I mean, these were messy and stupid and crazy hits. But look who's doing them. It's a bunch of druggies and women. You know what I mean? So yeah, the hits are ugly and the hits are stupid. They don't even make any sense. And they're I don't want to use the word. I don't want to use the R word. This is YouTube. But yeah, I mean, they're being carried out by stupid people, right? Really, these aren't okay. Women who take LSD, okay, for one, and the guy who's in charge of the women who take the LSD are carrying out these hits. Now, the Tex Watson guy was like a big, strong, athletic guy, right? Charles Manson was kind of a smaller guy. But whatever. Who brings 3 women on a hit with knives? I mean, it's just like, it's ridiculous, right? But that's what's going on. It looks to me like it was a hit. It looks like it was a hit. Like it's not like and some of these people are still alive, right? Some of these people are still alive. And I'm saying, like, it doesn't look like it was just, oh, they're just a bunch of crazy. See, because the media tries to say that, because that's the narrative and that's the motive, right? They gave you the motive and they gave you the narrative, and that's all there is to it. But it looks like there was more to it. So now the other entry I have, it says that Lino LaBianca was on the board of the Hollywood National Bank, which was infiltrated by the mob. Of course it was. Because what is Hollywood? I just told you. Hollywood is movies, right? Who finances movies? Drugs. Drugs finance movie studios. That's why That's why they're promoting drugs in all the movies. That's why all through the 60s and the 70s, they promoted drugs and sex and drugs. And you know what I mean? They promoted the mafia agenda. The organized crime agenda was promoted in all the movies because that's who's sponsoring the movies. So the movies were one part of it. The drugs were how that. So what Hollywood basically is, and the government that's under Hollywood, is a giant drug laundering, money laundering business. That's what Hollywood is. It's about laundering drug money. It's about laundering drug money through major movie studios, Paramount, Columbia, MGM, right? Who runs all these things? You look at the names of who runs these. These are people involved in organized crime. These are people involved in sex abuse, much of it having to do with children. Not all. It's abuse of everybody, but including children, right? It's a hardcore crime group. And they're totally connected to Washington, D.C., and the CIA and the FBI and the Department of Justice because it runs exactly the way they want it to. Runs exactly the way they want it to. But it says here that Rosemary LaBianca, her, which was the wife of Lino LaBianca, who was the head of the, it says he was on the board of the Hollywood National Bank. I don't know if any of this is true. I'm just looking at a Google entry. It says that Lino LaBianca was on the board of the Hollywood National Bank, which was infiltrated by the mob. More interestingly, Rosemary LaBianca was a dealer of mescaline and LSD and had a connection to the mafia drug dealer who went to the Cielo Drive house just hours before the murders there. I'm going to have to look more into that. I don't know exactly who that person is, but that's the house where they were killed, right? I don't know. I think that angle makes more sense than what the media has been telling me since the 1970s. Okay. Since the 1970s, I've been hearing the story about Charles Manson, and they've been making tons of money off it. Because not only do they make money, they make money off of it, and then they use him to build more prisons and hire more cops. And see what I mean? This whole prison system is based on this idea that there's guys out there like Charles Manson, and they could go off at any time and just start killing everybody. I don't think so. I think it was a hit. And I think that, there are crazy people that just go out and randomly kill people. That does happen occasionally. And it usually happens because they're on drugs or they're just mentally ill. But this Charlie Manson thing looks to me like a hit. Now, why didn't Charles Manson just go, I was paid to do this by blah, 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 because he's a criminal and he doesn't want to do that. He hasn't. If you notice about all of his interviews, he never says a word about anybody. He never says a word about anybody. He gets some deal where they say, we're going to come in there, we're going to do an interview with you. And they probably offer him money to do the interview that he can use in prison to buy whatever. I don't know how that works. But, they say, we're going to do an interview. We'll give you, we'll do this for you. Give us the interview. They come and they do the interview. They ask him about his crimes. He acts like a crazy person. And then everybody's happy, right? He never rats anybody out. He never talks. I never heard him. He never said, how did he meet George Spahn? How did he come to live on the movie set of The Lone Ranger? Nobody asks him that. Nobody asks him that. I would have asked him that. Seems like a reasonable question. Yeah. So now what's the connection between the Tates and the LaBiancas other than Charles Manson? Well, the connection is Terry Melcher drove Charlie Manson to the Tate house so he knew where it was. That's why he knew where it was, because Terry Melcher, who was a record producer, drove Charlie Manson there. And the guy from the Beach Boys set that meeting up, right? So the Beach Boys guy, Dennis, set up the meeting with Melcher. Melcher comes out to the ranch, which is the movie studio. Why call it a ranch? How about we call it the movie set, where Charlie Manson lives on a Hollywood movie set. Come on, dude. Come on. You don't have to be Columbo to figure this one out. We've been lied to. We've been lied to. So anyway, so Melcher comes out to the movie set. They've got a story for the media about how Charlie Manson was mad that he didn't get a record contract. I don't believe that. I don't think he gave a shit about a record contract. I think he cared about drugs. And I don't think he cared about being famous. I don't think he cared at all about. I think that's a cover. That's the motive. That's the motive that we were given by the media and the district attorney's office in Los Angeles. Right. The prosecutors. We were given this false motive. It's just nonsense. Because I don't think look. What do you think? Do you think that what does Charlie Manson care about? Drugs, sex, money, so that he can just live out there and do drugs and have sex. He doesn't care about anything else. He's already got all these friends. Everybody knows him. He's got everything he wants. But what he need, he's a professional criminal, and somebody wants a hit done. So look, you can hire crazy people to do stupid shit, and they'll go do it because they don't care. They don't have the sense to not do it. And that's about all I can. That's about all I can see with the whole Charles Manson thing. Is that he was just a guy. Everybody knew who he was, and that they knew that hey, I need this thing done. I think this is what happened. I think the Terry Melcher guy was probably involved in selling drugs, and that's why Charles Manson went to the first guy, whose name I can't remember, cut his ear off, and then had him stabbed to death by the Tex Watson guy. Then he went out to the Tate's house because Terry Melcher showed him where the house was. Terry Melcher was over there, and somehow Terry Melcher was involved in that. Now, why wasn't Roman Polanski there? Maybe Roman Polanski didn't want to be there because he knew what was going to happen. Maybe that's why he wasn't there. Maybe he didn't like the fact that his wife was having an affair with this guy who, and maybe that's the guy that got his wife pregnant. Maybe he didn't like that. Maybe he decided they all had to die and he was going to pay for it. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. Roman Polanski is a very strange person. Roman Polanski is a convicted child sex pervert. I don't know. But Roman Polanski just made weird, like the first movie he made was weird. It was like a movie about a couple who picks up a hitchhiker. It's just like, and this is like, come on, dude. That was his movie that he made. But I don't want to talk about his movies and his weird stuff. But he, if you were Roman Polanski and you're a weirdo and you've got all this money and you're involved with people that are in organized crime that are into drug dealing, and your wife is having an affair with a guy and he hangs out in your house when you're not home, and he may have just gotten your wife pregnant. Maybe that's a motive. I don't know. Maybe we should call LAPD and just like, hey, maybe this motive. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a possibility. It's just possible that the husband of the pregnant woman who has a boyfriend who she spends all of her time with, and all of a sudden she's pregnant. Maybe that's a motive for murder. I don't know. Nobody thought of that. Well, Roman Polanski, is he still alive? I don't know. But that's who we're talking about. So all the people involved in this crime are super rich, into drugs, into weird sex behaviors, and they knew that Charles Manson was somebody that was a professional criminal, and professional criminals can. He apparently, obviously, Charles Manson was willing to commit murder. He was willing to commit murder. Tex Watson was willing to commit murder. The girls that were along for the ride were willing to commit murder. What did they get out of it? What did they get out of it? Did they get money out of it? See, nobody. How come nobody asked that question? Were they paid? We're talking. Charles Manson just happens to be connected to a bunch of multi-millionaire drug dealers, multi-millionaire international drug dealers who own movie studios all over Hollywood. I mean, did any of these people have money? Well, of course you're not going to find out about that, because that's the government, dude. That's the government. The government is the drug dealers that run the Hollywood studios, and it's all organized through the CIA. And then they run the media. Like when you go to Hollywood, okay? I grew up in California. When you go to Hollywood, like you're in Hollywood, and that's the everything that you see, the people, all the degeneracy of the people walking around there, that all comes from the movies and the music, which comes from the government. It's not separate. The drug dealing, the heroin, the LSD, the cocaine, the crystal meth, the crack, the marijuana, it all is organized by the government, by the CIA. Who brings the drugs in? The CIA. Right? And so then the government passes laws that you're not, that against the drug. Why? Then they can just arrest you and throw you in prison. It's like a giant hellhole is basically what it is. That's the only way you can explain it. Like first they bring the drugs in, and then they get you to take them, and then they throw you in prison. Well, because they want to do that to you, right? That's what they do. That's what they do. I don't take drugs. Don't take drugs. Stay out of their whole thing. Don't take their drugs. Don't watch their movies. Don't go to prison. Don't be involved in any of the garbage that they're trying to get. They want you to get involved in all their garbage, and then they want to torture you to death in a prison, right? They want to torture you to death in a prison. Like first they get you to do all their evil shit, and then they kill you. That's it. And it just goes round and round and round, and that's all they do. And some people make a lot of money off of it. So, but aside from that, it looks to me like Charles Manson was connected to super rich people in Hollywood, connected to drugs, big time drug dealing. Just think, when you think of movie studios, when you think of Columbia Pictures, MGM, Paramount, just think of drugs. Just think of heroin, LSD, cocaine, marijuana, ecstasy, like all the drugs. Just think of all the drugs, all the party drugs, right? That's all. Like think of the movie studio as a front for a drug business, and it's like a way to what do you call it? Launder the money. So you have the banks. So this LaBianca guy who got killed by Manson, and his wife who got killed by Manson, she was apparently involved in selling or distributing LSD and mescaline. And LaBianca was on the board, according to this one, unless this is incorrect information, according to this entry on Google, he was head of the Hollywood National Bank, which was, of course, it's infiltrated by the mob, because the mob runs Hollywood. The mob runs the movie studios. The mob sells the dope. And so they launder all their drug money through the movie business. They're laundering all this money through the movie business and through the record business, right? That's how they, where do you think all this money comes from? It comes from advertisements on the radio station. No, they're laundering it. Now they control the radio. Now they control the movies. So now they can control you by telling you what to think. Now they control Fox and CNN and MSNBC and NBC and the Financial News Channel, and they control all these different radio stations, and they put on there all the shit that they want you to think about every day, because they're the drug business, right? They're the mafia. That's the mafia. And they get the politicians elected, and those politicians write the laws, and those politicians appoint the head of the FBI, and those politicians appoint the head of the CIA, and they appoint the head of DHS, and then those people then blackmail the politicians that come in. And if you want to be a politician, now you have to answer to the DOJ and the FBI, right? It's like a big circle. It's a circle of corruption, and it's a circle of just corruption. That's what it is. So, and Charlie Manson was a part of that. He was just a part of it. He was just a part of that big circle of corruption. And I guess I'm going to end off now, but I did mention the Wonderland murders in the beginning. Do you know none of the people from the Wonderland murders went to prison? And that's different. It's not the Manson murders. It's the Wonderland murders, which were carried out by the Wonderland gang. And they went and robbed their drug dealer. It was that pornographer guy from the 80s. Can't remember his name. He was a porn star. They made a movie about this. He was part of this group, and they were all cocaine addicts, and they decided they were going to rob their drug dealer who was out there somewhere in Hollywood Hills. And this guy's a major drug dealer, right? He's a major drug dealer in Hollywood Hills selling cocaine. And they went out there and they robbed him, and they went back to their apartment to do the drugs. And the guy just showed up at the apartment later and just beat the hell out of everybody with, bash their heads in with hammers. Just bash their fucking heads in. I'm sorry about the F. Bash their heads in with hammers. And this guy, what was his name? The porno guy. He had to go there too, because the reason he was involved is because he went to the drug house and they got him they gave him money to go get the drugs. He was a total drug addict. So they give him money to go get the drugs, and then told him to go leave the side door open. So they figured out that he had done that. And so then they made him go to the house with them later. The killers did, and they made him participate in the murder of killing these people his friends. They made him. They gave him the hammer. Go, okay, now beat this guy's head in with the hammer. Okay, now none of those people in that crime of the Wonderland murders, that gruesome crime, none of them went to prison. They all got off. So you've got a major cocaine operation operating in Los Angeles to all these rich people who are involved in, once again, because the guy that was running this business, he was selling to all the actors and the musicians, just like the Charlie Manson thing. He was selling to all these people, but in his case, he didn't go to prison, and none of these other people went to prison. They all got off. They were found guilty, and then somehow they just got off, and they kept their businesses because they had other business. They have businesses that they run in Los Angeles, in Hollywood today. They own restaurants, so they run restaurants, and it was handed off to their kids, and their kids own them, and nobody went to prison. So that's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you about Hollywood. Hollywood is that bad. It's beyond. You can't even imagine how evil it is. That's the world of Bill Maher. That's the world of all these people you see, like everybody that's in Hollywood, right? That's part of this stuff. Like that's the stuff that that's what it is. It's purely satanic, evil, just weird crime. So yeah. Anyway, I think I'll just end off on that. I don't really have a lot else to say. I actually don't know a whole lot about this other than what I've just told you, which is how ridiculous the official story is about Charles Manson. Yes, he was involved in the crime. Yes, he carried out the murders. Yes, the people that were arrested and convicted, they all carried out these murders. The question is, why did they do it? Why did they do it? And what I'm saying is, no one's really looked into that properly. Why they did it appears to have been to carry out hits because they needed money to buy their drugs and live on their movie set, which is where they were living, on a movie set. They were living at the They were living at the Lone Ranger movie set, and they needed money for to do drugs and have sex because they're criminals. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was enlightening. But one thing the Illuminati is not is filled with light. The Illuminati is the opposite of light. They call themselves the Illuminati. It's kind of like Illuminati is supposed to mean the enlightened. They're not enlightened. It's they've taken this word that meant to be enlightened, and really they're just a cult of absolute darkness, death, perversion, abuse, corruption, crime, evil, Satanism. So it's literally pure darkness, and that's who they are. It's just who they are. All right, have a good night.